Hi, Eric Linask here at Cloud Expo. We're here in the Jacob Javits Center in New York, and I'm talking with Colin McNab from AppEnsure now. Colin, thanks for joining me.
All right, thank you very much. Good to be here. I appreciate DMC taking the time to talk with me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Start off, tell me a little bit about who is AppEnsure. What do you do?
AppEnsure, what we're doing, as you can probably get from the name, is we're ensuring the performance of enterprise applications as people move them into clouds and into virtualized environments. One of the challenges today is people put them in there and they use the old methodologies of measuring availability of resources in different technical silos to infer the performance of the application, and it doesn't really work. So what we've seen is a large move for non-mission critical stuff where it's been implemented well, but for mission critical apps where your business life depends on it, there's resistance to it, or it does happen and we see poor performance. And that's what we're trying to resolve.
So how does AppEnsure overcome those challenges?
Well, what we do is something's a little different. We measure the response times. It's kind of obvious really, but it's very rarely done. So we look at the response time for every transaction from a business application to any element of the infrastructure that supports it. Servers, storage, networks, and services. We then do a deep dive on the network stack and the storage stack, looking all the way down to layer 2 and all the way up to layer 7. From that, we can then follow the transaction through the infrastructure. So we can see an application A talking to a storage bank B through 3 subnets, and we're aware of the entire latency across that hop, end to end and hop by hop. And the minute we see the normalized auto baseline that we have for this transaction takes, for instance, 100 milliseconds, the minute it goes beyond 110 milliseconds, we'll raise the alarm and say, on this segment of this transaction, we saw this problem. And from that, you can now start to see exactly what you've got to fix. In other words, mean time to resolution gets collapsed, because normally you can fix things quickly when you know what they are. The problem is when something's slow, and you get that call, comes in and says it's slow, and they go look and count equipment and go, I've got plenty of stuff, can't be us, must be you, and then we get into the old finger pointing game, blame storming. So we can get away from that because we can be quite deterministic about what was the cause and what do we need to do to resolve it to bring this application back in with an SLA.
So you're enabling businesses to understand when something's going wrong and where it's going wrong. What does that mean for what they're going to be doing in the cloud?
Well, what it means is you can move things that are mission critical to the cloud to take advantage of the cost and flexibility without having to worry about the fact that am I going to start running my business down by doing this? One of the biggest problems, and the classic one, is e-commerce. You hit that buy button and suddenly you get the dreaded pinwheel, please wait, please wait. A lot of people don't. About a third of people tend to go away. And as I've seen some numbers as recently as last week from Amazon suggesting that 100 milliseconds lag time improvement gets them 1% more revenue. And consider they're doing billions of dollars a year, those are very serious numbers. So if you're now having to wait for extra tens of seconds as you do in some cases, you lose a lot of business. Banks see exactly the same thing, very high volume, high value transactions. It's that ability to maintain revenue, to maintain service, and feel confident that you can resolve things as they happen, rather than everything goes down and nobody knows what the problem is.
So you've resolved the issue of being able to understand where the problems are so that you're able to put more and more up into the cloud to create additional efficiencies. But is there still a question, is there a question of trust and privacy, especially now with all the conversation around government entities perhaps having access to some of that information?
Well, I think certain organizations will not put things in the cloud. Ironically enough, what I think you'll find for almost all organizations, within 10 years, you may find that you're not allowed to have it on-premise. You've got to have it in a secure cloud. Because the only people who are going to be able to afford to play these kind of wars are the big cloud providers. Because it is a battle. It's a battle between the hackers who want that information and the people in the cloud. Smaller organizations, the SMBs and even smaller banks, will never have the budget to take on these big professional hacking gangs coming out of China and Russia. So there will be actually a push that is not being obvious at the moment, but it means that people will start to say secure clouds are a much safer place to be than being in your own equipment. And I think that transition is starting to happen, but it's still got several years to run before that becomes the case.
Now, what is the impact of actual governments and government entities having access, requesting access to data that may be housed in the cloud? Does that have an impact on cloud utilization?
I think less so. I think most people, just the whole Facebook thing of people, the whole generations of people putting stuff out for view everywhere. There's less of a concern. I do notice that it's the old white men routine again in the Senate. They're the ones that are angriest because they're the ones that for whom they don't like that view. I think the whole generation under the age of about 30 is kind of like, yeah, and so I think that as the president said the other day, there is a trade-off between privacy and security, and one hopes that the governments make the right decisions for that. That's out of my purview, but I don't see it. It's certainly within our business, we've not seen that as being a big concern of people saying, I don't want anything in the cloud because I don't want the government to get it.
Fair enough. Colin, thank you so much for joining us here at Cloud Expo. I'm Eric Linask with TMC. Check out all of our Cloud Expo coverage in the TMC Video Newsroom.